The night sky above the mining colony was filled with strange colors, as if the heavens themselves were burning. Stars flickered unnaturally, and the ground shook beneath the boots of the workers. No one knew what was happening, only that danger was coming closer with every passing second. The alarms blared, but they came too late. Ships descended through the atmosphere, sleek and glowing, carrying weapons far beyond human understanding. The colony was under attack. Ethan had never seen war with his own eyes, only heard stories from soldiers who came back scarred and silent. He was just a young man working the machinery in the colony's outer fields, far from the safety of the main shelter. When the sky tore open and fire rained down, he dropped everything and ran, his heart pounding harder than the sirens. As he stumbled into the forest of twisted alien trees, he thought only of survival. Yet his path was interrupted by a sight so strange that it forced him to stop. In the middle of the chaos, an old alien woman lay struggling on the ground. Her skin shimmered faintly with blue light, and her eyes were clouded, full of age and pain. She was not like the warriors descending from the ships. She was weak, fragile, and helpless. Ethan's mind screamed at him to keep running. The colony was collapsing, and no one would blame him for saving himself. But something in the way she looked at him, silently pleading, cut into his chest like a blade. He couldn't leave her behind. Without thinking, he rushed forward, grabbed her arm, and tried to lift her. She was heavier than he expected, her body trembling as if every breath was a battle. Explosions shook the forest around them, fire crackling in the distance. He dragged her into the cover of thick roots, shielding her with his body as debris fell. She clutched his sleeve with surprising strength for someone so frail. Her lips moved, whispering words in a language he didn't understand. But her tone was clear. She was asking for help. "I've got you," Ethan muttered, though he wasn't sure if she could understand. He didn't know what she was or why she was here, but he couldn't watch her die. They moved slowly, every step heavy with the weight of danger. Twice enemy scouts passed close, their glowing armor cutting through the darkness like lanterns. Ethan held the old alien still, his hand over her mouth as they waited for silence. His heart pounded so loudly he was certain they would be discovered. But somehow, luck guided them. Finally, they reached the abandoned shafts of the old mining tunnels. Ethan had worked here once, back when the colony believed in endless resources. Now the tunnels were nothing but hollow veins in the earth, perfect for hiding. He lowered the alien granny onto the cool stone floor, gasping for breath as sweat poured down his face. She looked at him then, her eyes sharp despite her age. For the first time, she spoke in broken human words. "You saved me." Ethan froze. She could speak his language even if it was rough and halting. He nodded quickly, brushing dust from his face. "You need to stay quiet. They'll be searching." The alien granny gave a slow nod, her breathing shallow but steady. Her hands glowed faintly as she pressed them to her chest as if holding back something inside her. Ethan didn't understand it, but the air around her felt strange, heavy with unseen energy. He leaned against the wall, trying to calm his racing heart. He had only wanted to survive, yet in a single moment he had bound himself to this mysterious being. He didn't know it yet, but saving her would change everything. The fate of the colony, the fate of the war, and even the fate of his own soul would soon depend on the choice he made tonight. And far above, the invaders' ships circled like predators, unaware that in the shadows of the tunnels, a bond had just been formed. One that could ignite a fire brighter than their weapons. Tunnels were silent except for the sound of Ethan's ragged breathing. Dust floated in the stale air, illuminated by faint cracks of light from the surface above. He sat across from the alien granny, still trying to make sense of what had just happened. She wasn't like the invaders outside. There was no armor, no weapon, no cruelty in her eyes. Instead, there was something deeper, something ancient. Her chest rose and fell unevenly, but when she met his gaze, her eyes seemed to burn brighter. The faint blue glow on her skin pulsed slowly, as if it followed the rhythm of her heart. Ethan noticed it more now, a strange energy radiating from her body. It wasn't just a reflection of the alien sky. It was coming from within her. "Who are you?" he whispered, afraid that his voice might carry. She tilted her head, searching for the words. "Elder, of my kind, lost, alone." Her voice cracked like brittle stone. Ethan frowned. Elder. That word carried weight. She wasn't just some lost civilian. She was someone important, maybe even sacred to her people. And here she was, hidden in the tunnels with him while the invaders tore apart the colony above. He wanted to ask more, but the ground trembled again, shaking dust loose from the ceiling. The sound of boots echoed faintly through the rock. The enemy was searching. Ethan pressed his finger to his lips, motioning for silence. The alien granny obeyed, her glowing eyes narrowing. He grabbed a loose piece of mining equipment, a metal rod heavy and rusted. It was no rifle, but it was all he had. He crouched by the tunnel entrance, his pulse thundering in his ears. The voices grew clearer. The invaders were speaking in their own tongue, harsh and sharp, echoing down the corridors. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he understood the intent. They were hunting. Two figures appeared in the dim light, their armor glowing faintly, weapons in hand. Ethan's grip on the rod tightened until his knuckles hurt. He waited, hidden in the shadows, praying they would pass by. But one of them stopped. His glowing eyes scanned the walls, then narrowed at the faint blue light reflecting from deeper in the tunnel. The granny. Before Ethan could think, he lunged forward. The metal rod slammed into the soldier's arm, knocking his weapon aside. Sparks flew as the weapon hit the stone floor. The second soldier spun around, shouting an alarm. Ethan swung again, this time at the helmet. The impact rang through the tunnel, sending pain up his arms. The soldier stumbled but didn't fall. He raised his armored fist and struck Ethan hard in the chest, knocking him backward. The air left his lungs in a gasp. The second soldier raised, his weapon aiming directly at Ethan, but then something impossible happened. The alien granny stood, her frail frame trembling, her hand raised weakly in the air. The glow around her body flared brighter, filling the tunnel with a blinding light. The weapon in the soldier's hands shook violently, ripped from his grip by invisible force. He stumbled backward, shouting in fear. Ethan's eyes widened. The air itself seemed to bend around her, charged with invisible power. The soldiers tried to advance, but the light grew stronger, pushing them back as if the very tunnel had turned against them. With a single wave of her hand, she sent them crashing into the walls. Armor cracked, weapons shattered, and the two invaders fell unconscious in the dust. Silence returned to the tunnel, broken only by the sound of Ethan's rapid breaths. He turned slowly toward her. The frail, helpless granny he had dragged into safety was glowing like a living star. Her hands trembled, and when the light faded, she collapsed to her knees, breathing hard. Ethan rushed forward, catching her before she hit the ground. What are you?" he whispered, staring at her in shock. Her voice was weak but steady as she looked into his eyes. "More than I seem. You will see." Ethan held her close, his mind racing. He had thought he was saving her. But now he realized she might be the one saving him, and maybe even the entire colony. The silence after the fight pressed heavily on Ethan's chest. He could still hear the ringing from the blow he had taken, but his eyes never left the alien granny. She rested against the cold stone, glowing faintly, her breaths shallow but steady. He had seen soldiers with rifles, machines that could destroy entire cities, but he had never seen anything like what she had done. He knelt beside her, his voice low and cautious. "That wasn't normal. You're not just some elder, are you?" Her eyes glimmered faintly, the glow fading in and out as if even keeping them open was a struggle. "I was once, before the wars, before exile." Ethan frowned. "Exile? From your own people?" She nodded slowly, each movement of her head filled with weariness. "They feared me, my gift, too dangerous." She touched her chest with trembling fingers. "But now, gift is all that can save." Ethan sat back, trying to absorb her words. This wasn't just some fragile elder hiding in the tunnels. She was something greater, something the invaders wanted to erase. He thought of the two soldiers lying unconscious, their weapons broken like toys. She had done that with nothing but a flick of her hand. The thought scared him, but at the same time it gave him hope. If she could do that, maybe the colony wasn't completely doomed. Maybe there was a chance. But as if reading his mind, her voice broke that hope. Power costs me. Each use shortens time. My body is old, human, very old. Soon, it will break. Ethan felt a strange tightness in his chest. She had power enough to crush enemies, but it came at a terrible price. He looked into her glowing eyes and saw pain buried deep within them. Not just physical, but a lifetime of it. Before he could speak again, a distant rumble shook the tunnel. This one wasn't like the smaller tremors before. It was louder, deeper, as though something massive had landed above. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the ground itself seemed to groan in protest. Ethan helped her to her feet. We can't stay here. They'll tear this place apart if they think we're hiding. She leaned on him, her frail body surprisingly heavy, and they moved deeper into the tunnels. The old mining shafts twisted like a maze, some collapsing, others leading to hidden chambers. Ethan knew them well enough to navigate, but now every shadow seemed alive with danger. As they walked, the old alien spoke again, her voice weak but firm. You risked your life. For me. Why? Ethan swallowed, hard. He hadn't had time to think about that until now. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe because you looked at me like I mattered. Out there when everything was falling apart. It felt like if I left you, I'd be leaving myself too. For the first time, her lips curved into something resembling a smile. A small, fragile smile, but it lit her face more than all the glowing stars on her skin. You carry heart of fire, she whispered. Rare among your kind. Rare among any kind. They continued deeper into the earth until they reached an ancient chamber forgotten by miners. Strange carvings covered the walls, symbols Ethan didn't recognize, glowing faintly when Granny approached. She placed her hand on the stone and the entire room hummed with power. Ethan froze. What is this place? She closed her eyes, her glow strengthening as the symbols lit brighter. A temple, hidden long before your people came. A place of my ancestors. Here. I may call upon strength one last time. Ethan stared at her, torn between awe and fear. He didn't know what she planned to do, but the air around them was already vibrating, filled with energy he could feel in his bones. Outside, the invaders' ships moved closer, their search tightening. The war above was not waiting for them, and, deep in the chamber, the old alien was preparing for something Ethan could not yet imagine. The chamber pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm, as though the walls themselves were alive. Strange symbols glowed faintly, their light reflecting in Ethan's wide eyes. He had worked in these tunnels for years, yet he had never seen anything like this. It was as if the miners had dug too deep and uncovered something sacred. Something that was never meant to be found by human hands. The alien granny stood at the center, leaning heavily on Ethan for balance. Though her body trembled with age, her eyes shone brighter now, absorbing the glow from the carvings. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the stone floor, sending shivers up Ethan's spine. What is this place? He whispered again, his voice barely audible against the rising sound. Her frail hand brushed across the glowing symbols. A sanctuary, built by those before me. My blood awakens it. Ethan swallowed hard, his chest tightening. So this is your people's temple? She nodded slowly. Yes, a place of great promise and great danger. The carvings blazed brighter, filling the chamber with light so intense Ethan had to shield his eyes. The air thickened, pressing against him like invisible waves. He staggered, trying to steady himself. The old alien closed her eyes and lifted her hands, her trembling body illuminated as though fire burned beneath her skin. Ethan watched in awe and fear. He could see her outline shifting, almost changing shape, as if her frail frame was only a mask hiding something much greater. The glow carved shadows into the chamber walls, shadows that seemed to move with their own life. Suddenly, her voice rang out, not weak and broken, but strong, commanding, carrying echoes that filled every corner of the chamber. They come for death, but we will answer with light. Ethan felt his breath catch. The old granny who had struggled to walk, who had nearly collapsed in his arms, now stood like a pillar of fire, her presence towering over him even without changing her height. It was as if he was standing beside a queen, a goddess, something beyond flesh and bone. He stepped back, unsure whether to be afraid or to bow. But then, her glowing eyes turned to him, softening. For a moment he saw not the goddess, but the elder he had saved, the one who had clutched his sleeve in desperation. The chamber's light dimmed slightly as she lowered her hands. She swayed, exhaustion creeping back into her movements. Ethan rushed to steady her, and she leaned against him once more, her voice returning to its fragile state. This place gives me strength, but it also awakens enemies. They will know. We are here, as if her words had called them. The deep rumble of engines echoed above. The ceiling vibrated as heavy ships hovered low, their search tightening. From outside came muffled shouts and mechanical roars. The invaders were moving directly toward the tunnels. Ethan gritted his teeth. Then we can't stay. We need to move before they find us. But the alien granny shook her head. No, to run is to waste what little time remains. Here, I can awaken what was once sealed. And with it, I can protect your people. Ethan's heart raced. Awaken what? Her glowing eyes fixed on him, and in that gaze he felt the weight of countless years. A power, buried for centuries. But it comes with price. My body may not survive it. The thought hit Ethan like a hammer. She had already risked herself to save him. Now she was talking about giving everything, perhaps even her life. His throat tightened, words choking before they left. Above them, the sound of drilling claws bit into stone. The invaders were coming, tearing open the earth itself. Ethan turned to her, gripping her hand with fierce resolve. If you're going to do this, then I'll stand with you. I won't let them take you, not while I'm still breathing. Her faint smile returned, fragile yet powerful. Then together, we fight. The chamber trembled, the glow intensifying as if answering her words. And outside, the enemy drew closer, unaware of the storm waiting beneath their feet. The ground above cracked like thunder as drills and weapons tore into the earth. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the humming walls of the chamber pulsed brighter, as if responding to the danger. Ethan stood with his makeshift metal rod, gripped tight in his hands, though deep inside he knew it would be useless against what was coming. The alien granny placed her hand gently on the wall, and the glowing carvings flared in answer. Energy swirled through the chamber like ripples of light. Her frail frame shook, but her eyes burned with fierce determination. They have found us, she whispered. And so, they will see. A roar split the tunnel as stone exploded inward. The enemy stormed through, armored bodies gleaming with artificial light. Their leader, taller than the rest, carried a massive weapon that hummed with deadly energy. His glowing eyes swept the chamber and locked onto the granny. His sharp, alien voice rang with triumph. There she is, the exile. Kill the human. Capture the elder. Ethan's stomach clenched, but he didn't back away. He stepped forward, holding the rusted rod as though it were a blade. You'll have to get through me first. The enemy soldiers laughed, a harsh and mechanical sound, and moved forward. But the laughter stopped when the granny rose to her full height. Her body straightened, her glow intensified, and her frail hands lifted as if summoning something beyond mortal reach. The carvings on the walls blazed like fire, and the chamber itself trembled. Ethan stumbled back, blinded by the sudden light. The granny was no longer just an old woman. Her form shimmered, her skin glowing like molten silver, her eyes shining like stars. She looked younger, her posture strong, her voice thunderous as she spoke words in her ancient tongue. The enemy. Leader barked an order and soldiers rushed forward, but they were met with a wave of light that burst from her outstretched hands. The energy slammed into them, tossing armored warriors into the walls like dolls. Their weapons shattered, their armor cracked, and the chamber shook with the force. Ethan's heart pounded as he watched. The Demigoddess moved with power and grace he couldn't comprehend. She was light and fury, her every gesture reshaping the air itself. The leader roared and charged, his massive weapon glowing as it released a blast of destructive energy. The beam shot across the chamber, but before it could hit, the granny raised her hand. The beam split in two, bending around her as if she commanded the very laws of nature. It struck the walls harmlessly, leaving nothing but scorched stone. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chamber. "You bring fire, I bring dawn." Her hand came down, and the leader was thrown to his knees as if crushed by invisible weight. His weapon clattered to the floor and he let out a strangled cry, armor creaking under the pressure. Ethan stared in shock, torn between awe and fear. This was no longer the helpless elder he had saved. This was a being out of legend, a demigoddess, cloaked in light, bending the battlefield with her will. But even as she held the enemy at bay, Ethan saw her shoulders shaking. Her glow flickered, dimming for moments before returning. Power this great came at a cost. Every strike, every wave of light drained her fragile body. The enemy soldiers scrambled back, dragging their wounded leader with them, shouting in panic. The chamber walls hummed louder, reacting to her unleashed energy. Finally, when the last soldier had retreated into the tunnels, the glow faded. The granny's knees buckled and she nearly collapsed. Ethan rushed forward, catching her before she could fall. Her skin was hot to the touch, her breath shallow and ragged. "You can't keep doing this," Ethan said desperately. "It's killing you." Her tired eyes met his, glowing faintly even now. "It is not death, it is transformation, you will see." Ethan held her close, his heart heavy with confusion and fear. Above them, the invaders regrouped. The battle wasn't over. But he knew one thing for certain now. He wasn't just standing beside a survivor. He was standing beside a force that could change the fate of the galaxy. The chamber was quiet again, but the silence was heavy, filled with the weight of what had just happened. Ethan sat on the stone floor with the alien granny resting against him, her glowing skin dimmed, her breathing shallow. He could feel how fragile she was beneath the surface, as if the power inside her burned hotter than her body could endure. "You can't fight them all," Ethan whispered, his voice tight. "They'll just keep coming." Her eyes opened slowly, still shimmering with faint light. "They will come. Stronger, yes, but this place still holds more." Ethan looked around at the glowing carvings on the walls. The hum had softened, but the symbols still pulsed faintly, waiting. He touched the stone with his palm. Warmth spread through his hand and he pulled back quickly, startled. She watched him closely. "The temple responds to you." "To me?" He frowned. "I'm just a worker, a human who swings tools for a living. I don't belong here." Her frail hand rested on his arm. "You chose to save when others would run. That is why you belong." Before Ethan could respond, a distant roar shook the tunnels again. This time it wasn't just footsteps or drills. It was heavier, deeper, like the sound of machines awakening. He stood, gripping his rod tighter, though he knew it was useless against whatever waited above. The granny pushed herself to her feet, trembling but determined. "They bring beasts of war, weapons built to crush armies. If we do nothing, your colony dies tonight." Ethan's stomach twisted. He thought of the families still hiding in shelters, the children pressed against their parents in fear. He thought of his own brother, working near the central hub, not knowing if the walls around him would hold. He clenched his jaw. "Then tell me what to do." The granny's glowing eyes studied him with a strange intensity. The temple holds more than my power. It can awaken what sleeps. But only if you stand with me. My blood alone is not enough. Yours must join mine. Ethan froze. What do you mean? She stepped toward the wall, placing her glowing hand against the carvings. This place was built by my kind, but it was made for union, for one of us and one of another. That is the way it was sealed. That is the way it opens. Her words made his chest tighten. Union. One alien. One human. He was the missing piece. Before he could answer, the ceiling shook violently. Rocks tumbled down as part of the tunnel cracked open. From the dust emerged something monstrous. A war beast. Metal fused with alien flesh, its body towering and twisted, glowing red lines pulsing across its armored frame. Its maw opened in a shriek that rattled Ethan's bones. The granny's glow flared, but she staggered, nearly falling again. Ethan caught her, pulling her away from the collapsing stone. The beast advanced, claws tearing through the ground, each step shaking the chamber. "Do it now," she urged, her voice fierce despite her weakness. "Place your hand on the stone. Give the temple your fire." Ethan hesitated only for a breath, then pressed his palm flat against the carvings. The warmth surged through him again. No, not warmth. Fire. A river of light exploded into his body, racing through his veins, filling his chest until he thought he would burst. He cried out, but he couldn't pull away. The granny laid her glowing hand over his, and suddenly the fire steadied. The chamber erupted with light, brighter than the sun. The beast recoiled, shrieking as waves of energy rippled outward. Ethan's knees buckled, but he didn't let go. Symbols flared to life all around them, the walls alive with power. The granny's frail form shimmered, her wrinkles fading, her body straightening. She looked younger before his eyes, her glow no longer flickering but blazing strong. She was transforming, and the temple was the catalyst. Ethan gasped, the fire still burning inside him. But when he looked at her, he saw not just an elder. He saw a goddess being reborn. The beast roared and charged. The chamber's light rose to meet it. And Ethan realized he was no longer just a bystander. He had become part of the power itself. The war beast thundered forward, its claws scraping sparks across the stone floor, its massive frame shaking the chamber. Ethan's grip on the glowing carvings trembled as fire still rushed through his veins. His body wasn't built for this. Yet somehow the energy didn't destroy him. It fused with him, held steady by the granny's hand on his. She stood beside him, no longer frail. Her body glowed like molten silver, her eyes blazing like twin stars. She was taller now, her form straight and strong, her presence so overwhelming that Ethan felt small just standing near her. The beast shrieked, swinging one of its claws down toward them. Instinct took over. Ethan lifted his free hand, and light burst from his palm, forming a shield that shimmered like crystal. The claw struck it, sparks flying, but the shield held. The impact sent him staggering, yet he didn't fall. The granny's voice rang out, deeper and stronger than before. "Do not fear it. The fire is with you now. Let it guide you." Ethan gritted his teeth, pushing back against the claw. The fire inside him surged, strengthening his arms, filling him with impossible power. With a roar, he shoved the beast away, the shield exploding in a burst of light that staggered the creature. The granny lifted her hands, weaving patterns in the air. Light ribbons swirled around her, then shot forward like spears. They pierced the beast's armored hide, sending it crashing against the wall with an ear-splitting cry. Stone cracked, dust rained down, but the monster rose again, angrier than ever. Its red glow pulsed brighter, and it opened its maw. A beam of searing energy shot out, tearing across the chamber. Ethan didn't think. He moved. He pulled the fire through his chest and threw his hand forward. A wall of blazing light erupted before them, absorbing the beam. The power coursed through him, nearly knocking him to his knees, but he held firm. Beside him, the granny's glow flared brighter and her voice carried like thunder. "Together, boy. Strike with me." He nodded, his breath ragged, and reached out. Their hands touched, light fusing between them. The chamber itself seemed to respond, the carvings pulsing faster, the hum rising into a roar. The beast lunged. Again. But this time Ethan and the granny moved as one. He thrust his hand forward and she mirrored him. A wave of pure energy erupted from them, a blazing torrent that smashed into the beast's chest. Its armor cracked, glowing red lines shattering into sparks. The monster screeched, stumbling backward. Ethan's arms shook, the fire threatening to burn him alive, but the granny's hand steadied his, guiding the storm. Her voice was fierce, almost divine. "Hold nothing back. You are fire. You are life. Strike." With one final push, Ethan poured everything into the blast. The light roared through the chamber, engulfing the beast. Its body twisted and writhed, metal tearing, flesh burning, until it collapsed with a thunderous crash. The glow in its veins flickered once, then died. Silence fell. The chamber's hum softened and the air cleared of dust. The beast lay still, broken and smoking. Ethan dropped to his knees, gasping, his chest heaving as the fire inside dimmed. He looked at his hands, still faintly glowing, trembling from the effort. I did that?" The granny stood over him, her form still radiant though her eyes softened. "Not alone. Together. The temple chose you, as it once chose me. You carry its fire now." Ethan looked up at her, awe in his eyes. She was no longer just the fragile elder he had saved. She was a demigoddess reborn, standing tall in light and strength. But what shook him most was her gaze, not distant, not cold. It was filled with warmth, gratitude, and something deeper he could not yet name, but the victory was short-lived. From the tunnels above came new sounds, marching feet, louder than before. Hundreds of them. The enemy had seen their beast fall. Now they were coming with everything they had. The granny's voice was calm but fierce. "The beast was only the beginning. The war waits above. And now, boy, it waits for us." The chamber walls slowly dimmed, their glow fading back into the stone as if the temple had given all it could for now. Ethan sat on the ground, still trembling from the fire that had surged through him. His chest burned, his hands shook, yet his heart beat with something he had never felt before. Strength. The alien granny stood above him, transformed. Her frail posture was gone, replaced by a tall, radiant figure. Her silver glow wrapped her, like armor, and her eyes shone brighter than the torches of any ship. She was no longer just an elder. She was something divine. She reached down, placing her hand on Ethan's shoulder. "The fire is within you now. Do not fear it. Do not waste it. You are part of this battle." Ethan nodded weakly, though doubt lingered in his mind. He had fought off a beast with her help, but the sounds above told a darker truth. The enemy hadn't retreated. They were gathering. And this time, they were coming in numbers too great to imagine. The ground quaked again, followed by a low metallic rumble. Ethan could hear the clanking rhythm of machines, the steady march of soldiers, the growl of weapons charging. The invaders weren't sending scouts anymore, they were sending an army. "We can't stay here," Ethan said, forcing himself to his feet. "If they seal us in, this chamber becomes our tomb." The granny nodded, her face calm, her eyes glowing with certainty. "Then we go up, to the surface, to face them where all can see." Her words sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. Facing them meant walking into death. Yet when he looked at her, he believed. Somehow he believed she could stand against them all. They moved through the tunnels, climbing steadily upward. The air grew sharper, filled with dust and the faint metallic taste of smoke. The roar of engines grew louder. When they finally reached the broken surface entrance, Ethan's breath caught. The colony was gone. Where once stood shelters, fields, and homes, now there was only ruin. Fires burned, smoke curled into the alien sky, and bodies of machines and humans alike littered the ground. Above, massive ships hovered like vultures, their weapons glowing as they searched for survivors. On the edge of the ruins, an army of enemy soldiers stood in formation, hundreds of armored figures, weapons aimed, their glowing eyes locked on the two who emerged from the tunnels. At their center stood a towering commander, taller than any human, his armor dark and polished, his weapon a staff crackling with red energy. When he saw the granny, his voice boomed across the battlefield. So the exile lives, and she has found a pet human to guard her. Ethan's fists tightened, but the granny stepped forward calmly. Her glow brightened, her silver aura rising like a flame. Her voice, though soft, carried through the air as if the world itself listened. I am no exile. I am light reborn. And tonight, you will learn what it means to face the fire. The commander raised his staff, and with a single motion, the army advanced. Rows of soldiers surged forward, weapons raised, their glowing armor blazing as they charged. The ground shook with their steps. The air screamed with their war cries. Ethan's breath quickened. Fear clawed at him. But then he felt the warmth inside his chest flare again, steady and powerful. He remembered the beast, the shield of light, the fire that had bent to his will. He wasn't alone. The granny raised her hands and the sky seemed to split. Light poured from her palms, wrapping Ethan in its glow. He gasped as the fire inside him answered, fusing with hers. Together they stood like two flames bound into one. The first wave of enemy soldiers rushed at them, weapons blazing. Ethan thrust out his hand, and a wall of radiant light erupted before them, stopping the blasts in midair. The granny followed, her voice booming as ribbons of energy swept through the field, knocking soldiers off their feet like leaves in a storm. The battlefield lit with fire and chaos. Ships above turned their weapons downward, charging for a massive strike. Ethan stared at them, panic rising, but the granny's voice cut through his fear. Do not break, boy. Tonight, you burn brighter than them all. Ethan lifted both hands, his chest glowing like a star. He let the fire consume his fear, his doubt, his weakness. And as the first blast from the ships roared downward, he met it with light. The night sky ignited. The sky tore open as Ethan's light clashed with the blast from the ships above. The explosion painted the night in blinding colors, shockwaves rolling across the battlefield. Soldiers stumbled, shields cracked, and smoke filled the air. Ethan fell to one knee, his chest heaving. The fire inside him roared like a wild beast threatening to consume him. His hands shook, glowing faintly even as the power dimmed. He felt as if he was holding back the sun with bare arms. Beside him, the granny, no longer frail but radiant in silver light, stood unshaken. She extended her arms, and the sky answered. Bolts of pure energy rained down on the soldiers, tearing through their formations. Every step she took shook the ground. Every gesture sent waves of force scattering enemies like broken leaves in the wind. The enemy commander raised his staff, shouting orders in his guttural voice. His army regrouped, spreading out to encircle them. More machines landed from the hovering ships, towering constructs of metal and flesh, their red cores pulsing with power. The air filled with the grinding of gears and the growl of engines. Ethan forced himself back up, his legs trembling. He looked at her, his voice raw. I don't know if I can keep doing this. Her glowing eyes softened for a moment. You can, because the fire chose you. It does not choose the strong, it chooses the willing. Her words steadied him. He clenched his fists, letting the warmth flow through his veins again. The fear didn't vanish, but it bent beneath the weight of resolve. The first of the war machines charged, its claws slamming into the ground, sending rocks flying. Ethan thrust out his hand, and a shield of light formed again. But this time it was larger, steadier. The machine's claws screeched, against it sparks flying until the granny's voice thundered. Now together, Ethan pushed, and she unleashed her own power beside him. Their energies fused into a blinding spear of light that shot through the shield, piercing the machine's core. It exploded in fire and shards, crashing to the ground in a heap of broken metal. The enemy commander snarled, his armor glowing red as he raised his staff. Energy crackled from it, lashing through the battlefield. Soldiers rallied behind him, their weapons glowing with the same crimson light. Ethan staggered, the weight of the fight crushing him, but the granny's hand touched his shoulder. Her voice was steady, calm, almost tender. "Do not fear him. He is only rage. We are fire and dawn." The commander charged, his staff striking the ground with a shockwave that sent Ethan flying back. Pain tore through his body as he hit the dirt, gasping for breath. The commander's weapon swung toward him, ready to end it, but the granny stepped between them. She raised her hands and the staff froze mid-swing, halted by invisible force. Her glow flared brighter than ever before, her body almost too brilliant to look at. "Your time is done," she said, her voice echoing like the voice of many. The commander strained, roaring, his armor cracking as he fought against her power. Ethan forced himself up, the fire within him surging once more. He staggered to her side, their light fusing together again. Side by side, they pushed. The commander's armor shattered, his staff splintered, and his body was thrown backward into the wreckage of his own machines. The battlefield went silent for a heartbeat, soldiers frozen as they watched their leader fall. Ethan collapsed to his knees, barely able to breathe. His vision blurred, his body trembling, but through the haze, he saw her. The granny, no, the Demigoddess, stood in full radiance, her silver light blazing so bright it seemed the night sky had become day. And for the first time, Ethan understood. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She was ascending. She was becoming something greater, something eternal. The soldiers looked at her with fear, some dropping their weapons, others retreating. The battle wasn't finished yet, but the tide had turned. Ethan whispered through ragged breaths, his heart full of awe. "You're not just a savior, you're a goddess." She turned her glowing gaze down to him, and for the briefest moment her smile was gentle, like the elder he had saved in the tunnels. "And you are the reason I rise." The battlefield was silent for only a breath after the commander fell. But the war wasn't finished. The hovering ships above hummed louder, their weapons gathering energy. The soldiers who remained raised their rifles, their fear battling against their orders. Ethan struggled to his feet, every muscle aching, his chest burning with the remnants of fire. He could barely stand, but he refused to fall. His eyes locked on the glowing figure beside him. The alien granny was no longer frail or broken. She stood tall, radiant, her silver light flowing like armor, and her eyes burning like twin suns. The soldiers hesitated. Some backed away. Others shouted defiantly. The largest of the ships lowered its cannon, a weapon meant to erase entire cities. Its glow spread across the ruins, bathing everything in crimson light. Ethan's breath caught. "We can't stop that," he whispered. The granny placed her hand on his cheek, her touch gentle despite the storm around them. Her voice was calm, steady. "You already have. Without you, I would still be in the dirt, forgotten. You gave me fire again, and now I give you the dawn." Before Ethan could answer, she stepped forward, raising her arms to the sky. Her glow expanded, brighter and brighter, until even the soldiers shielded their eyes. Her voice carried across the battlefield, filled with power and sorrow. "I was once exile, I was once broken, but tonight I am reborn, and through him, through the human who chose mercy, I rise." The crimson cannon above fired. A beam of destruction, wide as a river, tore through the sky toward them. Ethan threw his hands up in instinct, but it was not his shield that answered. It was hers. The granny's body blazed with light so intense it swallowed the beam. The energy curved, bent, and finally shattered like glass against her radiance. The explosion lit the night, but she stood untouched, a living star against the darkness. The soldiers cried out, some fleeing, others dropping to their knees. The ships shuddered in the air as if the fire itself was pushing them away. Her aura reached higher and higher, her body shifting, no longer bound to frailty or age. She was more than elder, more than warrior. She was a goddess in full. Ethan fell to his knees, tears blurring his vision. He couldn't breathe, not from fear, but from awe. She was beauty and terror, light and storm, everything the universe whispered about but never showed. And then her gaze fell on him. Amid all the fire, amid all the glory, she looked at him not as a goddess, but as the woman he had saved in the dirt, trembling and frail. Her smile was soft, warm, almost human. She lowered her hands and the battlefield stilled. The ships above turned, engines roaring as they fled. The soldiers scattered, their discipline broken, leaving behind weapons and cries of fear. The war had ended not with armies, but with light. Ethan's body finally gave out. He collapsed onto the scorched earth, his strength gone. But before darkness took him, he felt arms around him, lifting him gently. Her voice whispered into his ear, softer than before. "You gave me your fire, now I give you mine." When he woke, the sky was calm. The ships were gone. The colony survivors had emerged from the ruins, staring in wonder at the glowing figure, who stood among them. But she was no longer a withered elder. She was young, radiant, her beauty so unreal it left the people speechless. She turned, her silver hair flowing, her eyes soft as she looked down at Ethan. He gasped, his heart stopping for a moment. She had transformed fully, not just in power but in form. A demigoddess reborn, breathtaking beyond words. And when she smiled at him, the reward she gave wasn't riches or power. It was something far greater. She had chosen him, the human who stood when no one else did, the one who carried the fire with her. Ethan's breath caught not from pain but from wonder. He had saved an alien granny. She had become a goddess. And in the end, her reward was the kind of gift that no war could destroy. She gave him her light. And with it, she gave him her heart.